US Secretary of State John Kerry as he arrives in Brussels for talks with his NATO colleagues. NATO plans to announce a series of trust funds for Ukraine to bolster Kiev's defences. The focus will be on command and control, logistics and cyber defence. NATO officials stress that no weaponry will be supplied to Ukraine by the alliance, but military trainers could well be sent to Ukraine if required. It's a step that is unlikely to go down well with Russia. Jonathan Marcus, BBC News, Brussels.
Now, the first of 300 American special forces have begun work in Iraq. They're helping the government resist the advance of the Sunni militants who've overrun much of the north and west. The US Secretary of State John Kerry's been in urgent talks with Kurdish leaders in Erbil in the north. Fergal Keane sent this exclusive report about one Sunni faction now approaching the capital, Baghdad.
The Kurds have battled to consolidate their territory, to keep their autonomous region free of ISIS. Yet in the shadow of its ancient citadel, the Kurdish capital, Erbil, is a sanctuary for Sunni fighters who don't belong to ISIS. And it was here that we met with some who travelled to and from the front line. These are tribal fighters from embattled Anbar province, and claim Baghdad will soon fall.
It is a matter of time, less than 1 month. Now they're asking young Shia to fight against us. But we will be there very soon and Baghdad will fall under the revolution.
But that's far from certain, even for battle-hardened fighters driven by hatred of the Maliki government. What's also significant, though, is the resentment they feel towards their ISIS allies and their foreign fighters for hijacking the revolution.
I want to say to America and the world that this is not an ISIS revolution. This is a Sunni revolution. We ask the EU and America to support the Sunni people. We are not terrorists.
Their political spokesman said his men might even end up fighting ISIS once victory had been achieved.
The Sunnis reject ISIS. There's a vendetta between the tribes and ISIS because of crimes they have committed before. The battle with them is simply postponed.
The Iraqi army is still striking at insurgents, but is demoralized and weak. Latest reports suggest the country's biggest oil refinery has fallen to the militants. Now America is pressing for a new Iraqi government more acceptable to Sunnis.
Without an adequate, transformative decision by the leaders of Iraq, anything that the United States or others or allies or friends would choose to do to try to fight back is going to be limited, if not impossible.
John Kerry was speaking here in Erbil, where Iraq's ethnic groups coexist peacefully under the Kurdish majority. It is a dream, but only that, of what a peaceful Iraq might look like. Iraq is a complex catastrophe, and the idea that there will be one outright winner who can control the whole country is a fallacy. What we've heard from the Sunni fighters suggests a growing resentment of their ISIS allies. So even if the insurgency does win, it could merely be the first phase in a much longer war. Fergal Keane, BBC News, Erbil, northern Iraq.
Well, also in Erbil is the BBC's Jim Muir. He explained a little more about what exactly the US Special Forces are going to be doing.
American officials have made it clear this is not a relief column. It's not the cavalry pouring over the horizon to do the Iraqis fighting for them. These will be primarily on a mission of assessment. They're advisors, they are technicians, they're intelligence assessors and so on. They will be setting up, or have already set up, a joint operations room with the Iraqi military command in Baghdad. They're supposed to do the same here in the north once all 300 are on board, as it were. And their job also, they've got special forces units. Now, these are the kind of people who are needed if you're thinking of doing airstrikes, because they would be the ones identifying suitable targets. And of course, there's always this horrendous risk of hitting civilians and causing a much more serious counter-reaction than anything you're actually achieving. So that will be their job, assessing the state of play, assessing the state of readiness of the Iraqi armed forces, who are at the moment, I would say, in a posture of tacitly accepting that the rebels can control the vast amounts of territory that they've gained in the last two weeks, and that is the American assessment, that they're capable of holding that. So the Iraqi forces at the moment are focusing just on harassing operations using helicopter gunships, and on building up their forces in Baghdad itself, because they do reckon that at some stage or another it will come under a rebel offensive. So that's the state of play. The Americans could call in airstrikes, but Mr. Kerry and others have made it clear, that's the Secretary of State who was here just yesterday, made it clear that that's not going to happen in a serious way until the politics are right, until there's a unified government that's stretched out to the Sunnis and others, so they can be weaned away from the militants of ISIS. They can be then isolated and hit. That's the theory, that's the hope, but at this stage it's kind of rather a desperate one.
Jim Muir there in Erbil. In other news today, South Africa's longest and costliest strike is over after 5 months. Platinum miners are returning to work after the 3 biggest firms signed a 3-year wage deal with the miners' union. After so much time away from the job, the miners will have to undergo training and health checks before the mines can return to full production.